Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer and explore how we actually transform our lived experiences into meaningful stories. Today, we're tackling a truly fascinating topic. What are personal narratives? It's something we engage with literally all the time, often without even realizing it. We're going to unpack the art and really the power of personal narrative storytelling. And honestly, by the end of our time together, I think you're going to look at your own memories in a completely different light.
But before we get into the nuts and bolts of how these stories are built, we have to start with a pretty massive question. How do we understand reality itself? I know it's a heavy, philosophical concept, but the answer actually lies in something we all do every single day without a second thought. You see, we don't just process life as this random, chaotic series of events. We process it in a very specific, structured way.
And that structure is story. Humans naturally organize experiences through story. Since the absolute dawn of human communication, we've used narratives to make sense of the world around us. We explain our lives through beginnings, conflicts, turning points, and reflections. Think about it. When you're just venting to a friend about a frustrating day at work, you are actively turning a bunch of random, separate events into a structured, cohesive narrative. It is literally how our brains are wired to function.
So bringing that down to a concrete definition, what exactly is a personal narrative? Basically, it's a form of storytelling based on a writer's real-life experiences, written from their own point of view using pronouns like I, me, and my to reflect and make meaning. The absolute crucial point here is that a personal narrative isn't just reciting a dry list of facts. It's a deeply human act of reflection. It's not just stating what happened, it's exploring why it mattered.
And honestly, this goes to show that these stories aren't just locked away in dusty academic essays. Everyday narratives are everywhere. It could be a student describing that super confusing first year of college, someone reflecting on grief, or maybe a complex story of cultural immigration. It could be a veteran recalling their military memories, a patient explaining their medical journey, or even a teacher describing a transformative moment in the classroom. What unites all of these wildly different situations? They all center entirely on lived experience and personal meaning.
All right, let's move on to Section 1, the mechanics, building the story. There is a stark, super fascinating contrast between two very different types of writing. Think about strictly formal or research writing. That kind of writing is totally objective, it's fact-based, and it uses a very formal tone. You generally try to keep yourself completely out of it. But then look at the personal narrative. This space actively creates room for emotion, creativity, vulnerability, and reflection. Unlike research writing, personal narratives actually demand intimacy. You have to put a piece of yourself onto the page.
But here's the catch, right? Even though these stories are entirely true, you still have to build them using classic elements of storytelling. You can't just dump a bunch of facts on a page and expect people to care. You need to vividly recreate scenes, use conversational dialogue to bring people to life, share your internal thoughts, map out your emotional realizations, and highlight the conflicts and turning points. You really want the reader to experience the moment right alongside you, almost like they're standing in the room watching it happen.
This creates a fascinating dynamic where the writer becomes both the storyteller and the subject of the story. You are simultaneously the camera lens framing the shot and the actor standing on the stage. It's this delicate, incredibly tricky balancing act of stepping back to tell the story clearly while simultaneously stepping in to convey the raw, lived emotion of the experience. Okay, moving right along to Section 2, the core, reflection and deeper meaning.
The driving engine of any good narrative really comes down to this single, vital question. Why does this experience matter? This is absolutely the most important question you can ask, because a narrative is rarely just, this happened. If you tell a story just to say it happened, your audience is inevitably going to be left asking, okay, so what? The reflection part of the story is exactly where you answer that so what. Consider the difference between a surface-level event and its deeper meaning. Let's say you failed a test. The surface event is just that, failing a test. But the deeper meaning? That narrative might actually be exploring the crushing weight of perfectionism, dealing with intense family expectations, or learning the really hard lessons of resilience. Or take moving to a new city. On the surface, it's just packing boxes and renting a truck. But the deeper narrative explores loneliness, finding your identity, or the human struggle for belonging.
There's this quote that just perfectly captures the essence of reflection. The event itself is often only the surface. Beneath it lies interpretation and meaning. Moving from what happened to what it actually means is the exact process that elevates a simple, everyday anecdote into a truly powerful personal narrative. Which brings us to Section 3,
the imperfect lens of memory.
You know, memories are definitely not objective facts permanently saved on a hard drive in our brains. They are interpreted experiences that have passed through a really complex series of filters. When we recall an event, it's filtered sequentially through our emotions at the time, the simple passage of time itself, our shifting perspective, any trauma involved, our personal growth since the event happened, and of course, our broader social and cultural context. We aren't just reciting facts, we're interpreting the past through the lens of exactly who we are today.
And because of those complex filters, two people can experience the exact same event and walk away telling entirely different narratives about it. This perfectly highlights why subjectivity isn't a flaw in personal narratives. It's actually the very thing that makes them so powerful and deeply human. Your personal narrative is unique because your specific combination of filters is utterly unique to you.
All right, let's wrap things up with Section 4, the impact, why your story matters. The power of narratives extends far, far beyond just the individual. When we share these stories, we build empathy and actively challenge ingrained stereotypes. Personal narratives preserve history from the ground up. They amplify marginalized voices that might otherwise be completely silenced. And crucially, they humanize abstract issues. By sharing our vulnerabilities, we can actually show how real people are affected by complex social problems, and that can spark massive cultural conversations. Think about it. So many of our greatest social movements began with someone simply choosing to share their personal story.
But zooming back into a personal level, they also help us answer life's truly big questions. Who am I? What experiences shaped me? What moments changed my perspective? How do I understand my place in the world? Ultimately, the stories we choose to tell become incredibly powerful tools for our own self-discovery. They help us solidify our identity and figure out exactly who we are in this vast world.
Which brings us to our final thought. What deeper meaning lies beneath your memories? We all have this huge wealth of experiences, seemingly ordinary, everyday moments that, upon reflection, hold profound lessons about growth, fear, love, or resilience. Because every single person carries a rich narrative within them, I'm going to leave you to reflect on what your own lived experiences truly reveal. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really challenge you to start looking for the deeper story in your own life today.